Walker here with Deaf Digits Guitar Lessons, and today I've got a live video lesson for my student Bernhard, who's been working on Sultans of Swing, and he's got his act together on that. He's learning through great tablature file and listening to the recording and doing all the work he needs to do to learn all the lead parts. Today I wanted to give him a lesson, and a lesson on how to use those sixths that we hear sometimes in Sultans of Swing, stuff like this. Little licks like that where these sixth intervals are kind of going up and down on parallel strings, and those are really cool. We can use those in a blues setting. We can use them in a lot of rock tunes. We can use them in jazz. They're really versatile, and they sound to me they always sound like you know what you're doing when someone uses that kind of interval and uses it tastefully. It really has a positive effect. So I'm going to use the chord progression that goes through, I think, the verse on Sultans of Swing as the first guinea pig here to give you an example of what you can do with these sixths and how to find them for whatever chords you're using. And then we'll perhaps go through a couple other examples. So the progression that we're going to deal with is D minor, then C major, then B flat major, and A major. And we're going to find these six. I'm going to show you where to find them all up here first and make a little etude out of them, a little thing that you can play along with. And then I'll show you why they all work. So at the 10th fret, we're going to get everything here is going to be middle finger on the G string, and then either first finger or third finger on the high E string. So middle finger just stays on the G string going all the way up and all the way down to wherever we go. So we start on 10th fret, middle finger goes there, G string, 10th fret, third finger on the 10th fret, high E string. And the way I'm playing these over here is not the Mark Knopfler way. He uses fingers only, but I'm using a pick and a finger to pluck like this, so that I can get them both at the same time if I want. Or if I want to go back and forth like this, I can do it really quickly. You could also use a pick if you want to. You can go back and forth like that. Or you can mute the strings and do that. Strum through it with a pick or with a thumb. So we've got 10th fret. This is for D minor. And then we're going to go down to middle finger goes to 9th fret. And first finger on the 8th fret. That's for C. Then we're going to go down, take this thing down 2 frets to 7th fret and 6th fret. Then down 1 fret to 6th fret, 5th fret. So let's do that again. Those are our 4 chords. D minor, C major, B flat major, and A major. Now let's look at why those work. So for D minor, the bar chord for it, the 6-string bar chord would be right here. So what we're taking when we do that little 6th interval is the G string from the bar chord and the high E string from the bar chord. Because if you just eliminate all the other fingers and all the other strings, you end up with 2 notes on the 10th fret. Same thing if we go down to C major bar chord, we get G string and high E string. We just take 2 little slices out of the bar chord. This is 9th fret, this is 8th fret. So we can eliminate all the other fingers, we get this. Same thing for B flat major. We eliminate everything else, we just get this. And same thing for A major, we get this. So that's the first way you can find the sixths, is you go for whatever chord is happening at a given moment, you visualize the bar chord, the 6-string bar chord, wherever it is. So you find your root along the low E string, and visualize that bar chord, and then you take the 2 notes on the G string and high E string for your 6th interval. So you don't actually play the bar chord. Don't even put your fingers there. Imagine that you're putting your fingers there, and take your fingers straight to the notes that you want. So you're not putting extra movement in there. So next we can do the same thing up a little higher. So each one of these, I kind of think of 6 as existing in pairs. There's this one, and there's another one up here that also goes with D minor. And then here for C, there's one here, and there's another one here that also goes with C. And for B flat, there's one here, and one here. And for A, there's here, So every major and minor chord, I think of these as having two different sixth intervals that will work really well with the chord. That's really, it's just two notes out of the chord here and then two notes out of the chord up here. It's just a matter of finding where they are. So you have a way of finding the first one with your root on the low E string. Now we have to figure out a way to find this one up here. So let me show you what I'm playing first. For D minor at the 10th fret, you can slide up to second finger to 14th fret and first finger on the 13th fret. So you try to get used to that little space going from one to the other. So there's no clear local root if you know your roots on the low E string really well, and you know that that's D right there, and you know your roots on the A string really well, that's D over there. That doesn't help at all. An octave higher than that is here. That's sort of helpful. That's sort of close, but not close enough to really grab this really quickly. The closest ones we have are on the D string right there and B string right there. So you could think of this, if you know your open D minor chord like this, it's just those two notes out of the D minor chord on the G string and the high E string, in this case, just moved up an octave. So you could think of it that way. Then you have to know that there's a root on, well, you have to know your roots on the D string and or the B string in order to find this interval quickly. Alternatively, you could start from here and then slide up to that if you know how to get that distance. So in my case, maybe 10 years ago, I've been playing guitar for about 20 years. Maybe 10 years ago, halfway through my guitar career, I decided I'm going to memorize the notes on all 6 strings because I know the notes really well in the E or both E strings and the A string. I don't know them well enough on the D string, G string, and B string. So I literally just made flashcards. And I used them every night before going to sleep for maybe 5 or 10 minutes for a week. And then I knew my D string, D, G, and B strings by heart forever after that. All it took was flashcards for a few minutes a night for a week, and that was it. So for me, that's D right there instantly. And that's A, and that's F, and that's G, and I know all the notes on the B string really well, and all the notes on the G string and the D string really well. So if I know where these two are, that's D, that's D, then I can find this interval in between those two roots really quickly. No matter what minor chord I'm going for, I can say, okay, well, that's G, so that's my G minor, or wherever I need to go. So that's our upper one for D minor. Now we have an upper pair, or an upper half of the pair of sixths for C major, and it's up here, 12th fret. Then for B flat, we go up to 10th fret, and then for A, we go to 9th fret, like that. So how are those working? Let's look at, they're all 3 major chords, so they all work the same way. So let's look at C major. It was here for 8th fret, C major, and then we go up to both notes on the 12th fret. Now that works sort of the same way that the minor one worked. Our local roots are here, this is C, and here, this is C. So that's right in between them, and you can visualize that as being a D chord up here. I really hate this one. I never use this chord, but I visualize it all the time. It's that's like an open D chord, like that, but moved up here. So I've got those 2 notes out of it. And you could also visualize it out as being like an open C chord, like that. I never use this voicing either, but I visualize it. This is like an open C chord, just moved an octave higher, and you're taking the G string and the high E string out of it. Those 2. So if you know your root C is here, and or you know your root C is here, then you can find that little interval in between them. You can go directly to it. And alternatively, just as with the minor chord, you could start from here and then move up into that one. If this one is easier to find for you, then you could go, if a new chord comes up and you want to play one of these sixths, then you could go to the one that's easier to find, and then slide up or down to the one that is harder for you to find. So that's the same deal with B flat. When we take this little sixth up here, those are our B flat roots on the 8th fret and on the 11th fret. And that's right in between them. And then same thing with A major. Those are our A roots right there. So here's what we can do with this on these 4 chords. We can make kind of a little exercise out of it, just jumping back and forth between them. So I'm going to take what you do with your right hand really doesn't matter. You can just kind of piddle around with it, go back and forth between the notes, play them together, play them back and forth, whatever you want to do. I'm just going to give you an example here. So really you're working on how to find all these in your left hand and make them sound musical. So we start with D minor. We're going to use both of the sixths on each of these chords now. So we're going to go C major now, B flat major, A major, D minor, C major, B flat major, A major. So all of those, we're starting with the lower one and then sliding up to the upper one. The other way we could do it is start with the upper one, slide down to the lower one, or we could jump back and forth. So maybe we could do something like this, where we could go D minor, and now C, B flat major, and A, D minor, C, B flat major, A major. So jump around with those, play around with those. When you have new tunes where you have a chord progression, you want to do something different with it. Maybe the chord progression is something like, I don't know, just G and C back and forth. Take that as an example. And you're like, this is so simple. I'd rather do something other than just strumming the chords over here. Sixths are a great way of doing something a little different. So we could take G, C, just one measure on each like that, and we could go find some of these sixth intervals. So G would be here, and the upper one, since we have G bar chord right there, the upper one would be up here, 7th fret. Since we have roots here, that's a G, and that's a G, so right in between them there on the 7th fret is your upper sixth. So those are your two options. And then your C options would be, here's your C bar chord here, and then there's your upper one. So two of those are right next to each other. This one for G and this one for C. So maybe you're strumming along like this. You want to do something. That's pretty cool. You can do G, get both of those, and then it's a quick transition here into C. So that was quite a bit of moving around, but if you have more chords, usually you'll have more of them will be right next to each other like those two were, this one for G and this one for C. So try this out on a bunch of different chords. For now, just keep doing everything on the G string and the high E string. You can also do this trick on the D string with the same shape, D string to B string. Same shape, and you can use all the same stuff, but your landmarks for your roots are going to be different. So here, that's the same as this one for G, but now on the D string and the B string, but there's no low G root down here on the 6th string to help you keep track. So that would be the future of working on these things, is first get used to them on the third and first string like that, and then start, once you've got some fluidity with those, start moving them over and see if you can find them also on the fourth string and second string. Let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching. See you next time.